Okay. So I'm pleased to reintroduce Kim Burke. Kim is a registered nurse. She served as coordinator of religious education at St. Joseph Parish in Danville and has taught natural family planning for the Diocese of Harrisburg. She and her husband, Greg, have 4 daughters. They both actively participate in the Diocesan Guild of the Catholic Medical Association. And Kim is speaking tonight. The topic of her presentation is, or the title of her presentation is Retail Therapy, the Spiritual Considerations of Shopping. And shopping, sometimes humorously called retail therapy, can be motivated by various reasons. Here, Kim will consider, and we will consider, the positive and negative aspects of shopping habits. And I might say on a personal level, my wife Eva and I feel very privileged to call Kim and her husband Greg friends and their daughters as well. So without further ado, Kim Burke.
Okay, thanks, Jim. And I want to welcome everybody tonight. It's my honor too, and I'm so grateful that Jim asked me to participate in this wonderful series. And I look forward to the end of this presentation, taking your questions. I was told this is very familiar, like sitting in a living room and discussing things with one another as we do with our prayer groups and our parish families. So thank you. And I want to say that I truly feel like a celebrity tonight because you all are choosing to see this presentation of my talk instead of watching the Oscars. So thank you very much for joining. So I'm going to keep this somewhat informal as I go through this presentation. Again, I welcome your questions at the end. You'll understand as we get further through why I chose this curious title and this topic to put some ideas together and to share with other people. And I'm going to share my personal story later on as we go into the presentation. But I let Jim already introduced myself. I've been married almost 30 years to my wonderful husband, Greg. Some of you know him as a physician at Geisinger Medical Center, which is why we were brought into the Danville community many years ago. I want to take a look tonight at the spiritual considerations of shopping. And I suppose you all can kind of guess that there is a wonderful positive side, but there also a downside at times to the aspects of shopping. So let me try to bring up my presentation here, and if you'll bear with me, I am still learning technology. So here we go. So retail therapy, I subtitled it Reward, Remedy, or Ruin, as you can see, and we're going to go through some of the aspects of that. Just forward here. Sorry for the ding there. So let's look. I like to go through this like we were told in story when we were learning in school about telling a story. We want to look at who and what and where and those kind of questions. So let's start first with who is shopping. Now, the old adage is that women are the ones who are the shoppers and shopaholics.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Kim, your slides aren't, I can't see your slides.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Kim, so maybe you need to share your screen. Can anybody else see them? Jim, can you see them?
No, I can't, Greg. I was just getting ready to let Kim know that. I wanted to give a few seconds to see if she pulled them up.
I'm used to interrupting her. It was no problem. Thank you.
Okay, let's
Just
see.
want to see if you could share your screen. You had it up before, Kim, so it should be able to work.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened. Let's see. Nope, that's not it either. Okay, let me try closing out here, going back to Zoom. And let me share a screen. Okay, I think I know what happened. And
there we go. You're up.
Can everybody see that now?
Yep.
All right, are we good to go? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So who is shopping? Well, we can surmise that women have been known with a history of shopping, that we're the ones that do most of the shopping. And some of that is true. Women tend to enjoy the process of shopping. We like to look at things, handle things, kind of make a more of an emotional purchase when we're shopping. I know for me, I like to go to the grocery store and really look at the produce to figure out what might be the best purchase. However, I was surprised to learn when I was looking at some of the information here that men are actually surpassing women with online shopping, in that the recent figures, 84.3% of men shop online as opposed to 77% of women. And the age differences, everybody is shopping, especially now that we can do so online. Very interestingly, people in different generations approach it in different ways, especially the younger generation. They're very comfortable with using technology. And it's interesting that you can find this kind of follows suit with our own ages when we were exposed to electronic purchase, electronic e-commerce. So you can imagine that those of us who were born in the 1950s, 1960s, we're pretty methodical in what we look at, whereas the younger generation is very eager to try things out, use internet web searches, look at the social media platforms first before they go into stores, and then they will actually do some in-store electronic shopping. So it's interesting how people who are doing the marketing research are really picking up on these trends, and they see the trend for moving forward into electronic shopping. Also, let's go here. What are we buying? So yes, there are necessities. That's probably first and foremost, but there's an experience to shopping. We shop for our interests, gifts, different things. I thought it was interesting that with necessities that I had heard that back, there was this thing called a lipstick trends, so that when we would have an economic downturn, we knew that we didn't have a lot of extra funds available to buy luxury items. However, women would prefer a nice new lipstick, and there was this trend that went on. But however, with COVID, things have changed quite a bit. So interestingly enough, what were some of the top selling things for the COVID situation was household cleaning products, disinfectants. The cosmetics sales dropped out very precipitously because we weren't going into offices and work situations. We could be at home in our pajamas. And so that market really significantly declined. But interestingly enough, what was popular was coffee, and that sale went dramatically up, and perhaps we spent a little bit more on our gourmet coffees and special flavors, and it is a comfort food. I can say that myself. So we can talk about different kinds of purchases. Experiences could be buying tickets to a concert, spending things like on sports equipment. Sometimes it's hobbies and gifts and that sort of thing. But for the purpose of my presentation, I want to talk specifically about possessions, and it's buying stuff, things that we would possess and bring home. I could spend a whole other presentation just talking about, like I said, the spending habits of the different age groups and what they're buying, but that, like I said, could be a whole other presentation. So where are we buying things? My daughters, we have 4 daughters, and they really loved thrift store shopping. And I know some people like to go to yard sales. They'll use catalogs, purchase things. Back in the day, we would look at catalogs and we would purchase things by making a phone call. Nowadays, also, some people like to shop on TV, and you can see the trend with QVC. That right in there makes it ready access for seeing things, selecting things. And again, men are doing the same thing. What is really still big, and I was surprised, is brick and mortar stores, which is a curious thing because our own shopping malls are starting to be empty. However, it's running the same as online shopping. And that has a couple different reasons. And one of which I was surprised to find out is that our younger generation still likes to go into a store, see things, and they get the satisfaction of buying it and having in their possession already. Now, many of us, and I'm going to go into how many of us are buying online. You can imagine the precipitous increase of buying online because of our COVID situation. So it's been pretty significant. And I'm losing the statistics here, but I can say, we can kind of guess at what's been going on there. I might find that information a little bit. So another thing, when are we buying? So with purchasing power through different means, we're able to buy things readily, again, especially online. Sometimes things are for convenience. Like I was thinking the other day about the Instapot, which is a luxury, really. It's expensive, but it is very convenient and helpful to those of us who cook because we can get dinner on the table a little faster than traditional means. So that's one reason. Obviously, things for a purpose. I need a new pair of shoes. My feet are not what they used to be. As I get older, I need a pair of shoes. So I go shopping looking for that. Also, we do shop for emotion. One of the prompts could be something on sale. When this is a great buy, I should get this now. I've got coupons. So that might be a prompt for buying. And then there's other things. And we're getting into the meat of what my presentation is about, which has to do with reward or comfort. And we have some other things we want to look at with that. Now, another thing is, how are we buying it? And there's some new venues this way too. Back in the day, we had cold hard cash, which actually was a good way to keep us on track with what are we actually spending. It's one thing when you have cash in your hands and you're paying over a $10 bill as opposed to the anonymous credit card, which is easy to cash and swipe. There is also now new apps that we can use. My kids are very big on using Venmo, which is a new method. You can use your phone, you can swipe it there, you can electronically pay your friends for that cup of coffee, and that's becoming quite popular. Of course, there's loans. Oh yes, and there's savings. There's that great savings method for purchasing things. So all of these come into consideration with our motives and experiences of shopping. So at the end of the day, though, it all comes back to money, no matter how we're buying it. So we're going to look at all that too. Now, let's reflect on something that's important, which is really the reason for my talk, is why are we buying what we buy? And that's something for us all to really think about. And when we think about things that you can see, there's positive reasons, and dare I say, there are negative reasons and results for buying what we buy and the habit of shopping. So, I can't see a show of hands, maybe Jim, you can, but how many people have heard the term retail therapy? When I mentioned the term retail therapy to my husband, for example, he had no idea what I was talking about. And he went into work and he talked about it with some female colleagues, and they were like, oh, yes, I know what retail therapy is. In fact, as one colleague said, I think I need to do a little retail therapy for myself. I just kind of did some surveys with men and women informally. Some of the men knew about it. Oftentimes they had a spouse who liked to shop or daughters. And several men, and I'm not just trying to make this a men-women thing, but several men had not heard the term. So I suppose some women have not either. But okay, so retail therapy, as you can see, its definition is the act of buying some special things for yourself in order to feel better when you're unhappy. That could be one of the occasions. Or the activity of going shopping in order to feel better. And that's also just a positive experience, not just feeling better. So let's look at it. Could it be an occasion for reward, remedy, or ruin? Now, when I was doing some of my look at some deeper information on this today, I was looking at what I kept hearing about was the dopamine effect. Now, if you don't know what dopamine is, it's a neurotransmitter in our brains that contribute to feelings of pleasure and satisfaction, and it's part of our reward system. And we can be creatures of habits. So if something's pleasurable, we tend to go back to enjoy that again. I can say that for me, it's chocolate. So there's an example. But what was interesting to me was not only what we know it to be as the pleasure neurotransmitter, but dopamine's effect actually increases with anticipation of a pleasure, a positive thing. Now, I had always thought it would kick in as we received that positive thing, but actually research has shown, and there was a Dr. Susan Bensneck, published in Psychology Today back in 2015, who looked at different research studies, and she found, again, that dopamine increases with anticipation. So you'll see here I have these children. We can all remember anticipating Christmas and Santa coming. And it did seem, for me, in my personal experience, that it was the anticipation of Christmas that really was a heightened experience. So maybe you could relate to that too. Another thing we're talking about is a reward. Shopping is a reward. When my children were in Catholic school, as an example, my younger kids at the time had a teacher, Mrs. Byer, and she would come around with a cart, and everybody was all excited. Mrs. Byer's cart day today. Well, what would happen in class is that the kids would use a reward chart for good behavior like this. And if you filled your good behavior chart, you were given an opportunity to shop and buy a treat off of Mrs. Byer's cart. We also had children that had to have some medical procedures. And I had told them, you know, if you do well, and I know this is difficult, but, you know, you're going to be great. And as a little treat, you can go shopping in the gift store at the hospital. Here's $10 and you can get something special for yourself. Well, that reward got them through the difficulty of their medical situation and the procedures they had. So anyway, all that to say that that was a positive way of rewarding the children. Now, there is a negative side, and sometimes it could be a detrimental thing. So for instance, you could go overboard with rewards. I didn't offer $25 to my children after the procedure. It had to be moderated. Here's $10, which I thought was kind of generous too, but nevertheless. So there's an example where rewards can have an upside and a downside. Sometimes retail and purchasing can be used actually as a remedy. So of course we have a need, and I mentioned shoes, and I'm getting older, my feet aren't what they used to be. So an example is that I need to go shopping for shoes. The downside is sometimes I can find more shoes that I like than what I really need. So there's a downside to the remedy. Sometimes it can actually, the experience itself of shopping can be medicinal, if you want to call it that. My children liked Taylor Swift as a performer when they were younger, and I do remember there was a song that was popular, and I believe it was called The Best Day. And in it, Taylor Swift's lyrics describe when she was young and she had a bad day at school, and her mother spent time with her and suggested they go shopping, and they went window shopping, and it was the special time one-on-one with her mother, and it lifted her spirits. Some of us like to go shopping with friends, and it's not so much the purchase of what, you know, buying what they want per se, it's more the experience of it. I know when I was getting married to my husband, I spent quite a bit of time with my mother shopping for wedding gowns, and it was the experience of it, and we made good use of it. We'd go out for lunch and we'd have a nice time, but it was the fun of all that in addition to the excitement of the experience. So it's just mindfulness of, you know, the downsides of sometimes it becomes more than a remedy. Sometimes it becomes this. The acquisition of things can be overwhelming, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it harkens, again, this one thing I'd like to say too with this picture, we're looking at a first world problem. So we have a lot of means here in the United States and in other developed countries so that we can purchase, and we have the purchasing power to take care of our needs. There is still the poor in our area, in our country, and we have to have that preferential option for them and caring for them. But this is a first world problem. I think many Americans do have an element of this, an acquisition of more than we want, or excuse me, more than we need. So with that, we're going to be looking now at hearkening to healthy approaches to shopping. And really, what I'd like to do is look first at what our church, the Catechism, speaks of. And with the appropriation of property, it's legitimate for guaranteeing the freedom of persons and for helping each of them to meet their basic needs and the needs in which they care for others. It should allow for this natural solidarity between men. And if you go back into the Acts, I believe it's the Acts of the Apostles, and they say that those should hold things in commune, but yet if you must work also to be a part and partake. So we work together collaboratively in the caring and providing the needs for others. In his use of things, man should regard the external goods he legitimately owns, not merely as exclusive to himself, but common to others also. In the sense they benefit others as well as himself. So again, it's also keeping in mind the needs of your other people in your life, not just yourself. And it's a lens through which we'll go on to look at. So what we want to do is we want to think now, what are my reasons and my attitudes for shopping and buying? And what I'd like to do now is go through an examination of conscience. We have to remember that we're mind, body, and spirit. So we're going to look at those aspects. So let's begin with our examination of conscience. And if you're like me, I like to use the 10 Commandments as the template for preparing for confession. These questions are sort of going to be like our handouts that we have sometimes outside the confessional or apps we might have on our phones. So let's go through these questions together, and feel free to write things down if you want to write notes, but really think about this. And I want to mention too, that I forgot to mention at the beginning, was perhaps part of your interest in seeing this program, or as we go through this, that you're thinking about other people in your life who may enjoy spending, enjoy buying, and this might be something you want to share with them. So first, we're going to look at our relationship with God. Do we trust in God's provision for us? And we look back at the scripture in Matthew 6, it says, "Why are you anxious about clothes? Learn from the way the wildflowers grow. They do not work or spin. But I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was clothed like any one of them." Do we have other gods before him? We could make shopping and the experience of shopping a god. Do we keep the Sabbath holy? Now there's a consideration. On Sundays, are we partaking of shopping in the right approach? Mindful too that when we go retail shopping, other people are working to provide for that. So it's something to really weed out, something for us to consider those aspects. Do we give God our first fruits? That could be money. Are we spending, we're trying to remember tithing time, talent, and treasure. So treasure is one thing. Another thing is time. How much time are we spending in the process of shopping? And do we spend too much time doing it? Let's look at the next thing. And what we're shopping for, is there a violation of modesty, or is there an element of immorality in what we're buying? Aha, do we keep secrets about our shopping? I'm going to admit something to you now, that there have been times I've purchased things and I've tucked them away. I don't want others to know what I purchased, particularly my husband, and he will tell you that as well. So, that's something I need to convict of myself to think about and confess. Is there extravagance for its own sake? That can be thought about in a number of ways. How many have I bought? I need one in every color. It's beautiful. I might as well get the best. Even though I might not be able to afford it, I would be fine with this. And again, men, I would like you to think the same thing, because, you know, there could be elements to this of the things you enjoy purchasing. I need to get a new car, for instance, or whatever you enjoy doing. Please run this through your thoughts too. Now, what about this? Do I shoplift or steal? Do I repay what I borrow? Do I pay my creditors in a reasonable amount of time? Are we having to pay a lot of late fees for our delayed payment of our credit cards? Do I cheat creditors and sellers of what is theirs for goods and services? And I would say, are we generous to people who wait on us, such as our servers and that sort of thing? Again, it's not a possession that we're buying, but it may be an attitude of how we're spending our money. What about this? Am I greedy? And then other aspect could be, am I selfish? Am I stingy? The other side could be, or am I too generous? Am I spending too much? Am I spoiling my grandchildren, or so forth? The green-eyed monster of, am I envious of others and their property or experiences? Or am I jealous of others' properties and buy to compete? You know, that old keeping up with the Joneses thing. And then there's vanity. Am I motivated by that and what I buy? How about my attitude towards generosity? Am I frugal to the point where I deny or neglect the needs for myself and others? Frugality, however, if you refer to it as a form of thrift, may be good. Am I going to use coupons, reward points? Am I going to be careful with my family's finances? Am I rightly ordered in my purposes for shopping and buying? Could I purchase a different item instead of that? Or could I have borrowed it instead of purchasing it? And yet, some of the purposes for your shopping and buying could be rightly ordered, as it would be for charity or gifts for someone. So again, there's a good side, there's a bad side to this. And again, this is like an examination of conscience, as if we're preparing to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. Highlighting these thoughts here. Do I share with others my resources, not just of money, treasure, but also time and talent? Asking this question helps us foster a comprehensive look of a mindset of approach to our resources. So something to think about. Do I respect the property of others? Again, this is referring to things and possessions, so it comes into others as well as myself. Do I foster an attitude of respect? Do I ask to use those items before borrowing them? I think all of us can think of our children having some issues with that from time to time with their siblings, but we could be the same way with others in our lives and our families. And do I use and return them with care and return them promptly? How am I affected by the media or social media? And I want to make a special note on the COVID-19 effect. But there is traditional fear of missing out. The latest acronym is FOMO. And those who use social media can experience these, particular on Instagram or Facebook, because you see these wonderful pictures of people doing different things, having different things. Am I falling into this? Is this a temptation of mine? Or what about keeping up with the Joneses? They just got a new car. They just went on that vacation. that kind of a thing, and you feeling bad about that. And you'll notice too, especially online shopping, how many of us get these pop-ups as we're trying to just look up the news or something like that, because there's now algorithms and artificial intelligence that follow along on our sites that we visit. And also sites like Amazon make it really easy to shop because you just buy with one click. You've done it, haven't thought twice about it, click, 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 and you've filled your cart. And you filled your credit card too, filled the bill there. A special note on the COVID-19 effect too, you can imagine the increase in number of purchases online. And our younger generation really pays attention to references and referrals and recommendations from peers and what they find on social media. Some of the things are actually good in that you can follow a rating system of service or different products because you can't see and hold them in your hand. So I know myself, I will look at the number of stars, the comments of people making the purchase. But how am I affected too? And there's a downside to that because you can put negative media up about different things and you can put detractive things too. So COVID-19, again, we have spent a lot of time online too. And I think we're becoming more and more sort of like the analogy of a frog in a pot. If you turn the hot water up slowly, you make it hot over time. We're not even aware of it, as opposed to jumping in. I'm not saying this right, but a frog that you just throw into hot water, it's going to jump out. So sometimes we're just in that water and it's getting slowly, slowly turned up. In that it's bringing things to us that we might not have wanted to buy, but there it is. It's a pop-up. Or there it is. It's someone else recommending or using it. And we have that wanting to keep up experience. So we have our different kinds of media, some that we may enjoy ourselves. And, you know, or the discounts that are offered online. Yet again, sales bring us into it. So again, it's just good to be aware of what's going on. We fill our carts. So sometimes we find we've spent so much that we have more than what we need, more than what we want. And how about that? We've already bought the same thing over and over again. These are some of the warning signs where we might be, falling into some issues with purchasing, overbuying. Those would include clutter. I joke when I've given this talk before, when I spend time with my friends, I said, please come shopping in my basement. Everything's free. And my husband will attest to that. It has been a process. It's where everything goes. It doesn't know its place, or I've overbought. How about not being able to locate items, and it's not uncommon that we end up finding duplicates. Where is that hammer? I don't know where it's at. And then I might as well just pick one up. It's more convenient. And oh, there it is. It's under that pile of stuff in the garage. There it is. So we have duplicates. And how many of us or others we know are starting to be affected with anxiety and stress? Now, I do want to talk a little bit about these dear souls that we see that really have high anxiety and stress and may fall into the pattern of hoarding. And that's a very outlying situation, but a serious one that I think we need to approach with great compassion to those people who really fall on the one end of the spectrum. And usually things like hoarding have occurred. Pretty much everything has occurred for them with some sort of a trauma or a deep wound. And they find great comfort in acquisition of things. So I'm going to share a resource at the end of this presentation. But in all of this, we're building a bigger barn. I noticed when I did a little research that self-storage facilities in our country is over 2.3 billion square feet of property, of space to store our things in, which actually apparently is bigger than the island of Manhattan when it all is summarized. So again, a first world problem. We have so much stuff. We're trying to find a place to store it. You can imagine it's very costly too. So what does our Lord say in regards to building a bigger barn? So let me read you the scripture here. We want to go to Luke 12, chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. You can find it. And it's the parable of the rich fool. And Jesus said, now I have the rich man in the parable says, he's been toiling and building things, and he realizes he has so many things. He needs a bigger barn now. And he says to himself, I have so many good things stored up for many years. Now I can rest, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom shall they belong? Thus it will be for those who stores up for himself treasure for himself, but is not rich in what matters to God. So things can really get in the way of our relationship with God and lose the priority in our lives of relationships, especially our relationship with our Lord. And we have to remember, you can't take it with you. I need to remember that myself when I'm cleaning things out. I mean, at the end of the day, do I need all these things? Now, Father Mitch Pacwa, I heard say on one time, is with death, there's no luggage rack, there's no trailer hook, and you can't hitch a U-Haul to a hearse. So now it's time for me to share my story. So this was a real impetus for me putting this little program together and sharing it with others, hoping it would be helpful to you and also part of my healing process. This all came about with an incident that I had with my wonderful husband, and I'll try to summarize it briefly. We had attended, my husband had a conference at which he was speaking, and I had dropped him off, and I said I was going to just go across the road there. There was a shopping area, and my favorite store was there, and I needed a few things, and I was just going to do a little bit of shopping. So he set a time for me to come back and pick him up. So I entered this store, and there was a sale, and everything in that store had all the styles of clothing I absolutely loved. Everything fit perfectly. I'd lost a little bit of weight. Oh yeah, I have a reason to go shopping. I need to now fill up my wardrobe with some new things. So I pretty much, and this was a smaller box store, not a box store, but it was a smaller store, and they had new inventory, and I was able to pretty much try on everything in the store, and I found tons of stuff that I liked, and I had a credit card for that store, and I went crazy. So I spent hundreds of dollars in that store. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'll take it home. I'll try it on. I'll make sure it fits. I'm probably going to return just about all of this, but I really like this, and I'm really going to go whole hog. I mean, I don't have the store nearby, and it's hard for me to go shopping and so forth and so on. And the poor salespeople had to put everything back that it didn't fit me, but neither here or there, I was there to shop. So my husband calls me and asks, where are you? It's getting late. Oh, I'm just a little bit longer. I'll be over. Well, at the end of the day, I made my poor husband wait an hour for me out in the front of the hospital in the heat. And needless to say, he was pretty upset with me. And when I picked him up, something clicked. I said, something is not right here. And it was my, dare you say, my rock bottom point, where it was a sobering moment that I think I have a problem here. When I spend so much, I don't consider my family's resources, and I don't consider most of all my husband and the disrespect shown to him. There's something that needs to be done here. So basically what I had going home to is a closet that looks like this. And there's something to be thought about here. If I look at the sin involved, examination of conscience, it looks like I was heading to ruin. I mean, there was selfishness in all of this. I was doing what I wanted to, and my husband, yeah, he could wait for me. There was greed. I mean, my family has limited resources, and I was just using this money like it was a drink of water. So that needed to be looked at, confessed, and attended to. And actually, with greed, I should say, my husband helped me. He said, I want to hold on to all your credit cards, and I want you to return every single thing. Now, I did all that with the exception of one dress that I really, really liked. And interestingly enough, I have yet to wear that dress. So there's something there. There's greed and also vanity. I mean, this was stuff that looked good and I felt good and I needed it anyway because I lost weight and I wanted to look nice. Oh, on and on and on, I could just tell you. And ultimately, it was disrespect, particularly of my dear husband who worked so hard and is so caring and so generous to me in the first place, and improper use of my family resources. I'm not the only one in my family. We have 4 children, and my mother-in-law lives with us as well. So, I mean, I was disregarding them. So ultimately, it was a loss of integrity. And I share this with all of you because I appreciate your prayers, and I love you as my brothers and sisters in Christ. So I hope in sharing this, my story, I can help all of you too. And it affects many of us to a greater or lesser degree, but it's just, again, we examine our consciences as a preparation for not falling into ruin. Now, another aspect I do want to say is it did cause some soul searching, and we are mind and body and spirit. And with that, this remedy of reconciling all of this, of course, I went to confession, and it's a work of progress for me day to day. I realize it's still a temptation. Sometimes I fall, I buy too much, and things have to go back and forth. But all that to say, I was particularly having a problem with buying clothes. I noticed that. What are the things we collect a lot? Some of us may collect, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. We really like kitchen gadgets or something to that effect. There's something perhaps in our possessions that there's an inordinate amount of. So in my situation, it was clothes. Now, again, if you think about the people who've gone through traumas that fall into hoarding, there are certain traumas, and many of us have traumas to greater or lesser extent throughout our lives. But for me, I realized it went back to my childhood, and there were 2 key situations, 2 key episodes in my childhood. I have wonderful parents, and my father worked very hard, my mother too. We had moderate means. We didn't have a lot of money, and of course, it was an economic time in the 70s where the economy wasn't really the best. So all that to say, I was probably like 10, 11, something like that. At prime time in my life, we were about ready to enter becoming a young lady. And I was a little chubby too. And it was a little hard to find some clothes in my situation. So I remember my parents took us on a little vacation, and that didn't come readily from my parents either. And we had gone up to Niagara Falls. All that to say is we had stayed at an inexpensive motel. We had gone out to see some things, come back, and my clothes were missing. Here, the maid must have taken the clothes. My parents addressed it with the manager. It was like, nothing can be done. And we were visiting friends after that. And I felt very, needless to say, I didn't really have, almost all my clothes were pretty much gone. And like I said, it was something that was very, very traumatic to have someone come and take your personal possessions. So injustice happened, and a need was not met for me. So there's an issue there that I thought might have played into my need for keeping and acquiring clothes. Another situation happened around the same age, and I was just learning to like boys, and the first boy I had a crush on, again, it's an inexpensive little trip. We would go to the beach in the winter, if you can imagine that. But my parents had friends. Anyway, long story short, we had gone to this little winter March experience to go to the beach, and a favorite location. And our friend's son came along, again, my first crush. And the boys were jumping into the heating swimming pool. Who knew there was a heated swimming pool? Who knew that we could go swimming in March? And I was so excited. However, I did not bring a swimming suit. My mother was so kind to take me shopping, and we found something. And it was an embarrassing experience because, anyway, jumping into the pool, my mom came running to me with a towel. So it was so embarrassing, and it was so difficult. You're in front of this young boy that I like, and so forth. I don't have to go into much more detail. But what came out of that was want to have a swimming suit. Everybody else got to enjoy the pool except me, being humiliated and also fearful of this whole experience. So I'm just, this is something else that played into my need, want, and attachment to buying lots of clothes. So perhaps, as people are thinking about this in their lives, and you notice that there's a big collection of items that you might be storing, it might be worth looking at too. And with that, we can bring it to the sacrament of reconciliation if we're having an issue. The grace of the sacrament is unbelievable. And if you haven't been to confession in a long time, I strongly encourage it, because it truly is an opportunity for mercy, not judgment. The Lord knows already what's been going on, but to call it out, identify it, and bring it there and lay it at the feet of Christ as you do so in the confessional. Ultimately, he wants to reach out and heal you. He loves you, and he wants to give you his grace so that you can sin no more. Rise up, let's go, let's move onward. And he gives you the lasting grace to continue in that path of healing. The other thing is prayer. Prayer, I have found, if I just take quiet time, particularly in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and I offer this there again at his feet, he gives us the grace and he gives us the strength to continue on the journey back to him, to full health, dare I say, spiritual health, psychological health. And also another another prayer that I don't spend enough time with is praying to my guardian angel. And he's with us all the time. And he's with us when we're shopping. And he's with us with the buying and the collecting. And so ask him to help you make prudent decisions, and also to keep us away from the near occasions of sin. I think it's a great idea to make a plan when you're getting ready to shop. And we'll go to that in a minute. And finally, curiously enough, I recommend St. Nicholas. And I forget where I had heard, but it was around Christmas time. And I had heard St. Nicholas is a great saint to ask for guidance. He worked in the provision of 3 young women who didn't have a dowry, and this was part of his culture at the time. And I had begun praying to St. Nicholas around Christmas to help with some shopping for gifts. And wouldn't you know, he not only found great gifts, I heard back from the recipients, this was a great gift, and also he found it on sale for me. So he's very near and dear to me, so I would encourage you for some prayers to ask for his help as well. So what I was getting to was prepare yourself for the act of shopping and purchasing things, whether it's online, whether you're physically going to a brick and mortar store. And I came up with this acronym as a way to think about things. Think that you're spending bucks, okay? American dollars, they're bucks, and they're hard earned, and they are not come easily, because even when your credit card comes, the bill, you're still paying bucks. So before you shop, think. Before you buy, think of what and why you're buying it. Okay, so the reason you're going. Think about how will it be used, and even importantly, is it needed? The cost, of course, and the keeping of it. That's a very important thing. If you already have a lot, do I really need it? How do I store and care for it? And do I have the time and space? So let me see how we're doing in time. I'm going to be sharing this final things here with you. Assistance. If you find this is an issue or you want to speak to somebody about it, there is actually treatment for shopping disorders. Or even if you're not far down on that path, if it's just a beginning of an issue, talk to a supportive friend about it. I have a wonderful group of friends in my prayer group, and they're just so supportive. Talk to a priest, clergy member for spiritual care and guidance, religious sister. We have some wonderful sisters in our area that do counseling. That would be a great person to talk to. There are organizations of professional organizers, and they will come to your home or where you're at and help you sort through your mess and get things in order. You can find them online. There's multiple sources online for seeking formal treatment. American Addiction Centers is one at rehabs.com. The Mayo Clinic, it is a physical opportunity to seek out medical care and the elements of rehab treatment. And again, there's multiple sources if you go online. And we're also blessed in our diocese to have both Geisinger Health System and Penn State Hershey, where there is actual care for rehabilitation services. So I would recommend you check in with those health systems. So, and if you ever have any questions, or if I can ever be of help, I'm sure, you know, Mr. Gontis, Jim, you're free to share my personal email, and I'm always an ear to talk to and give whatever support I can. So that's it. And God bless all of you. Thank you so much for spending the time and sharing this opportunity with me.